I was in downtown walking to my car and I saw this man sitting on a bench. He was reading something. It turned out to be poetry. I went up to him. He told me his passion is Jesus and Israel. Because I always ask people, what's your name, age, and passion? He didn't know where I was from, but that's just happened to be what he was passionate about. At the end of the conversation, I took his photo, we did the interview. I was like, thank you, bye, have a good day. I'm walking away. And he's like, by the way, as I'm walking, it's like, I really like what you're doing. You're going to write a book one day, and it's going to be called We're Not Really Strangers.
That's so awesome.
And that's where the name came from.
Wow.
It was from a complete stranger in downtown.
Welcome back, guys, to episode number 80 of Connection is Magic. Thank you so much for coming back and tuning in. This week, I got a run it back episode for you, which is an episode so fire that we're revisiting it. This is with the founder of the viral authentic connection card game, We're Not Really Strangers, Koreen Odiney. Her and I sat down for an interview before I was even filming these interviews, actually, back in like 2015. This interview was done in a living room in a house which I rented a room in West Hollywood at Sunset and Fairfax, actually. Shout out to any of my old roommates who might be listening to this episode. And we went deep, man. This is before she released the card game, which would go on to get millions of followers on Instagram and TikTok. She used to have an Instagram account called Waffleography, and she would just go randomly about different cities, interviewing random people. We get to hear Koreen talk about the game and its infancy stages, and we get to hear her talk about her ideas for creating it, different concept questions for the game. We also go into how she handled some of her harder days and how some of her friends were not patient with her when she was starting this game. They were feeling like she was being selfish because it just totally consumed her, the creation of this game. I'm excited to have you guys check this one out, and here we go. Welcome, everybody, to Connection is Magic. I'm your host, Samson Schulman, a former music executive turned podcaster and coach. In a world obsessed with the highlight reel and keeping our difficulties hidden behind the curtain, we end up feeling lonely and isolated, and opportunities for human connection are missed. On this podcast, we dive deep with our guests and get them to share those dreaded, unfiltered pieces. We learn how to make lemonade out of life's lemons and realize adversity isn't sent to break us, but rather shape us into the greatest versions of ourselves. We appreciate you spending some time with us. Now let's begin our journey back home to connection. So you are a very interesting person.
Thank you. So are you.
Thank you. And we met about, we said 2 weeks ago at Soho House, and you were doing this game, which we're going to get into today. And it essentially kind of holds the same themes as what this podcast is about. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
So
absolutely.
I think us meeting was very cool.
Yes. Serendipity.
Very, very serendipitous. So Koreen is a photojournalist. She's been doing street photography since the age of 14. She was discovered by LA models at the age of 18. She's been modeling since the age of 18. She's 21 right now. And about within the last year, she created a game called We're Not Really Strangers, which is super cool. And it essentially just is designed to get people to take their masks off and connect in a real, authentic way. We're going to find out about that and a whole lot more today. Tell the listeners, just in a very quick nutshell, about the game.
So this game is all about creating instant intimacy between you and a complete stranger. And the game is divided into 3 levels: first base, second base, third base. The bases parallel the way that we engage with people, but it kind of breaks it down for us. So base 1 challenges the assumptions we make about each other.
Let's say I'm on a flight, those short conversations that you'll have in flight.
Yeah, so you're on a flight and this person sitting next to you, you look at them, right? And you project a story onto them, right? And we do this all the time, right? But how often do we really challenge those assumptions that we make, right? So that's what first, I'll read a few questions.
Yeah, please.
So first base question would be, what do you think my name is? Or what do you think I do for a living? Where do you think I'm from? So they start very basic. And then they get into, and then when you're asked, how are you? How often do you answer truthfully? That's first base. What story do you think strangers make up about me? Another first base question. What is the worst assumption someone has made about you?
These are great.
How many times do you think I've been in love?
Did you come up with most of these yourself?
All of these are original as far as I know. Your friends and I sat down
and we had a bunch of wine and no.
100%.
Yeah.
That is why I have such amazing friends. A lot of these questions I could tell you the story behind it. You know, like what about me is one of my favorite. What about me is most strange or unfamiliar to you?
Is that a first base?
This is a first base question.
Okay, now let's get into the second base.
Okay, so that's all first base.
Yeah.
And then if you are brave enough to get into second base, these questions are no longer about what do you think of me or how someone perceives you. It's about what is your truth, right? So if you could have it your way, who would you be with? Where would you be? And what would you be doing? It's one of them. My friend Ari came up with that.
Great.
Shout out to Ari. Another one I really like is what is something that is hard to admit about yourself?
That's great.
My friend Naja Crawford came up with that one. So this question was inspired by Malcolm Gladwell, actually, because I saw Humans of New York. He got interviewed, you know, that blog? Mm-hmm. And like, what's the one message he would want to convey to a mass audience, Malcolm Gladwell? And he said, change your mind about something significant every day. That inspired this question. Have you changed your mind about anything recently? What's the best compliment a stranger's ever given you? Mm-hmm. There's also wild cards that might pop up in the game. So, for example, give your stranger a compliment you don't think they hear enough.
Awesome.
So that kind of thing. And then one last question I'll share for second base that a stranger came up with that I met recently, which is, what's the last thing you lied to your mother about?
So good.
Which I thought was really cool.
Who came up with that one?
I forget his name, but it's somebody I played the game with. And at the end, he gave me that question. And also, have you ever said, I love you to somebody and didn't mean it?
Hey guys, I'm now opening up a couple of very select spots to do coaching directly with me. If you are a creative and you feel bogged down, you have doubts, you need clarity, so common on the creative path. And sometimes we get the clarity and then it goes away and we have to fight to get the clarity back and push through these growth spurt points. If you find yourself in one of these points, I love nothing more than to support people in this space on their journey. Simply click the show notes description, open that up and click on the word coaching. From there, you can easily schedule a complimentary call with me so I can hear more about where you're at and how I can support you on the creative journey. It's really tough to do that thing alone. So this is a chance for you to get some direct support from me. I'm in the second year of my master's in clinical psychology. I've been a training therapist, so I definitely also have that in my repertoire as well, be able to support people. Now let's get back to the show.
And I thought that was a beautiful question.
That's great.
I think that's amazing. That's what's so cool about this game is...
Let's go third base, though. Yeah.
And third base are reflective. So what has this conversation taught you about yourself? What do you hope for me?
Wow.
What do you think my strength is? When this game is over, what will you remember about me? Or what about me most surprised you? And
so base one is surfacey.
Yeah.
Base two is let's get deep.
Let's get deep.
And then third base is let's recap.
And let's reflect. And it kind of, to me, also parallels a quote that I love by Oprah Winfrey, that over the years of her interviewing people, she realized that what we all really crave is to know that we are seen, heard, and that what we have to say matters. Level one is that you're seen. What do my shoes tell you about me?
Yeah.
What is my sock? You know, and you're asking that. Second base, do you hear me? You know, like you're exchanging vulnerability with one another. And third base is, did what I say matter to you? Can we reflect now? And can you give me insight about myself that I didn't know before, and vice versa?
Love it.
And you can't, and I tried playing this game once with a guy. He was like, can we just go to third base? And I was like, okay, let's go to third base. So he started, what career do you think I'd be great at? Who do you think this game is more challenging for? Those kind of questions. Like, oh, wait, fuck, I can't just skip to third base. You can't. You have to go through each level. You know, each level is its own journey. Yeah. You know? And
I think what he was trying to do there is what this game works against, which is people just brushing quickly off of each other. Like, oh, cool, hey, you know what I mean? It's surfacey.
Yeah.
Your game seeks to, like, break through that.
Break through that. And it's
fun.
It's fun. And
it's fun and it's deep.
Yeah.
Those two things is a rare combo.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Yeah. You as a kid, let's get a little bit of the background.
Okay. I was born in Israel, and my mom and I moved to America when I was 6 years old. And I started taking pictures when I was 14. I was put into yearbook by my film teacher, and I immediately fell in love with it because I realized early on that my camera was my passport to people. So I was able to just go around school I was a bit of a loner because I didn't really have a clique of friends I would be with. I would just kind of wander around by myself and photograph different people. And that's when it all started for me. That was my way of connecting was, some people do it by gravitating towards a clique of people that they always are hanging out with. And for me, I've always been intrigued by connecting with strangers.
New people. You want to keep it fresh.
I like keeping it fresh. Having a core group of great friends, of course. But I love meeting strangers. It's always been my thing.
What do you love most about meeting someone new?
Oh, I think a part of it is, when you get a brand new notebook and it's like a blank canvas and you can just start fresh. You could put whatever you want into that notebook. And I think with a stranger, it's a blank canvas in a way.
I love that.
And I think there's something to learn from everybody. So I try to connect with as many people as possible and get the lesson from as many people.
So even those that hold different viewpoints than you do,
especially, yes,
you will want to connect with those people.
Yes.
You won't just write them off.
No. I mean, sometimes it is uncomfortable and I get nervous.
Yeah.
I really do get nervous. But
can we talk about that specifically?
Yeah.
When was the last time you connected with someone that had a different viewpoint than you and you pushed through that awkwardness to connect with them?
I mean, it happens all the time. I mean, it might not be an extreme example, but so with this game, I played this game with a stranger. Now he's a friend. And he and I had a different viewpoint in the sense that he is a bit jaded by people and doesn't always believe the best about people or their intentions, whereas I'm very optimistic about people. And we kind of just had that disagreement off the bat. And it made me a little uncomfortable, because I like to believe that people are good. But yeah, it was just interesting to get him.
What was the end result? Did you guys both walk away with the same viewpoints, or do you think you influenced him a little bit?
I think we both maybe influenced each other. And yeah, he's a new friend now.
There you go. So don't write people off, people.
Yes.
Okay, let's get back to the timeline. So you grew up in Israel and you got to LA when?
6 years old.
So you didn't really, was there any culture shock, or what was that adjustment period like for you?
I was 6, so it kind of was a quick adjustment, luckily. But I had to learn English quickly, but when you're 6 years old, it's pretty easy. Growing up, my mom, some people have very scholarly parents and they can help them academically. And my mom has been a huge influence because early on she told me, Koreen, I can't really help you with your homework. So you're going to have to become really good at asking questions. Because she speaks Hebrew, that's her first language. And a lot of the things I was bringing home was not in her, she wasn't familiar with it. So she always told me, you need to be the one after class with the teacher, staying late, asking as many questions as possible. And at an early age, that became my thing. Was I loved asking good questions, and getting interesting answers out of it. And I think that's where it all started.
That's kind of the origins of the game.
I think so. I just realized questions are magical in that way.
Wow.
That was one of my early hustles, was just having to be autodidactic in a sense and really seek knowledge for myself through others, because I couldn't always rely on a parent who could give me the answers. I had to seek the knowledge through other people.
That reminds me of this book, Malcolm Gladwell, him. He wrote called David and Goliath. Yeah, and he talks about a desirable disadvantage.
Ooh, that's good.
And so it's most people maybe would want their parents to be able to help them.
Right.
But you didn't have that, but it kind of shaped you to be who you are. Yes. Which is this kick-ass person that's able to connect with all these people. You might not have that if you had a mom that was feeding you all the...
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, he talked about how a number of the top CEOs are dyslexic. So basically he references basically the most successful trial lawyer in America is dyslexic.
Wow.
And his desirable disadvantage is instead of just citing just boring black and white information, he had to sort of learn how to communicate with people in sort of an engaging way because of his dyslexia. So he's able to convey certain things to juries and things like that keep them more hooked in.
Interesting.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Engaged versus the boring black and white.
Yes.
Desirable disadvantage.
Got it. Okay, I like that.
So take it back to 14. You discover photo journalism.
Yeah, I was in a film class and my teacher put me into yearbook. And so I got a camera. I was lucky enough to be able to get a Nikon D40. And I just started going around school photographing strangers in my school. And that's where it all began. I had a really bad breakup. And that really inspired me, though.
How long were you with that person?
Maybe a year.
Okay.
but I was really in love, and he broke my heart. And
Sorry.
it's all good. It's a desirable disadvantage, though, because it inspired me to take more photos, basically, and seek kind of more connections with strangers. And so I was photographing a bunch of different people, homeless, rich people in Beverly Hills Hotel to downtown, everywhere. And I was posting it, and my Instagram handle at the time was @chickensandwaffles. So every time I posted a photo in an interview with somebody, I would hashtag it waffleography, and that's how I was starting to do it.
That's awesome.
And I had a conversation, though, with a friend of mine, Jared, this photographer, and he was like, Koreen, I really like what you're doing. It's cool, but maybe you should come up with a better name, because you're photographing. Like, it's kind of,
People wouldn't know, right?
Yeah, people would, like, chickens and waffles.
You're doing this deep project.
Yeah.
It's chickens and waffles. Yeah.
And the truth is, though, I didn't know what to call it. I was just doing it because it was what I do. And then I had another really important friend, Casey. He asked me one day over the phone, he was like, Koreen, why are you doing this? Like, what's your why?
You weren't aware of that.
I wasn't even thinking about why I was doing it.
It's crazy.
I just enjoyed it.
Another book I'm reading right now. This is so crazy. Start with why. Simon Sinek. Yeah. Which is people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it.
Yeah, 100%. So those two people in my life made me aware of kind of the gaps I needed to fill. And so in the back of my head, I was like, okay, I need a name. And I need a why. I need a purpose or a call to action. Now, those were my intentions, but I didn't know how to go about doing it. And one of the questions in the game is, has a stranger ever changed your life? And for me, strangers always changed my life, but one in particular was I was in downtown walking to my car, and I saw this man sitting on a bench who's reading something. It turned out to be poetry. I went up to him. He told me his passion is Jesus and Israel, because I always ask people, what's your name, age, and passion? He didn't know where I was from. That's just how I knew what he was passionate about. And then at the end of the conversation, I took his photo. We did the interview. I was like, thank you. Bye. Have a good day. I'm walking away. And he's like, by the way, as I'm walking, it's like, I really like what you're doing. You're going to write a book one day, and it's going to be called We're Not Really Strangers.
That's so awesome.
And that's where the name came from.
Wow.
It was from a complete stranger in downtown. This was about 1.5 years ago. I saw his picture in an interview.
What intrigued you about this particular person before you went off?
It always is a feeling thing. It's like I was walking past him and he was by himself. So I was like, okay, he might be receptive. And he seemed intriguing.
Is it an intuition thing with you?
100%.
Okay.
It's all intuition with street photography. Like, people ask me, how do you, is it safe? And the truth is, I do believe it's safe. You just have to read people. Like, if you look into somebody's eyes and you don't feel a connection, or there isn't a smile, or they're very cold, I would never approach someone like that and ask for a photo. But if I look in someone's eyes and they seem receptive and kind, and it feels right, then I'll go up to them. So
has there ever been a time where someone wasn't receptive, where your sort of radar was off?
Yes.
Okay, can you tell us about that time?
Once it was really off, and I had to walk away crying. I'm not kidding.
Oh, no.
I literally walked away crying. And I forgot about this, but I was shooting in Slauson, and there was a group of men sitting outside together, and I parked. Sometimes I would drive and just park if I saw an interesting group of people. So I went out and I was like, "Hi guys, can I take your picture?" And the guy was like, "Why? What are you doing this for? Do you go to school?" And I was just honest. Sometimes I was like, I should have lied. I should have said I went to USC or something. But I was like, no, I don't go to school. I'm just doing this for fun. And he stood up and he was like, why do you think you can come with me with no credentials and this and that? And I was just shocked. And it was crazy. And the other guy had to calm him down. And so I ended up just walking away, but crying. And I went into my car. And that to me is very uncommon, because
how many people have you gone up to?
Hundreds, probably. Yeah. That's so uncommon. And to be honest, I don't even take it personally at all. But I remember going into my car. I walked to my car and I take a deep breath and I was like, don't let this stop you. You know what I mean? Don't. And I wanted to immediately go up to somebody else just to
get over that fear, right?
Yeah. That is always a fear when you're doing something like street photography or anything involving people you don't know. There's always going to be a risk of rejection, but that's okay. But yeah, that was a tough one. But for the most part, people have been amazing.
Let's flip it for a second. Yeah. Tell us about your best experience of going up to somebody. One of the most standout.
So many.
Is it too hard?
So hard because the stranger that gave me the name, we're not really strangers. That to me is magical. Like that.
Yeah.
A new question that someone came up with for the game, my friend Daniel, is what's the most unexplainable thing that's ever happened to you? I really like that question. To me, that stranger connection was unexplainable.
It's one of my questions later for you. I feel like we don't even need to cover it now, but it says, tell us about chance encounters or serendipitous meetings with people during the transition periods of your life.
Great question. That was definitely one of them, but all of them though. And the thing is, it's like each one connects to the other. Nothing is disconnected. I believe that, my first real heartbreak was when I was 16. And that was the first time I was ever in love. And I remember when we broke up, I was like, man, will I ever get over my first love? So my way of figuring that out was I went out with my camera, set up a tripod on Ventura Boulevard with my friend at the time, and we started asking strangers, do you ever get over your first love? And that's how I've always dealt with things, is I kind of ask people about their experience.
You want that mirror.
I want that mirror, and it's fun to just, it feels good to know you're not alone. Like that's the best feeling.
Bring it in. That's what we're talking about here. Yeah.
It feels good to know you're not alone.
It's so easy to think like, oh man, like we're the only one going through something. And I just feel like that's because most people aren't vulnerable. They don't put out what they're going through. So we can feel alone. Yes.
And also they're not invited to oftentimes.
Like they don't have this game that you've created or this podcast, or there's no channel for them to really go there, you're saying, right?
Sometimes we need a social okay. For me, that was my camera. That was my social okay to approach strangers.
Right.
But not everybody has that.
Right.
And I think that's what I hope this game can do for people who aren't photographers and want to connect with
What do you think that's about? The people not wanting to really deepen and be vulnerable with people?
I mean, it's just not the norm right now to do that with people that we aren't close with. Like,
what's funny to me is like you could be having like the worst day of your life, or a person could, and then some random stranger's like, "Hey, how's it going?" Of course, that person could be like, "Oh, it's fine."
Of course, there's a question. There's a question in the game that asks, when you're asked, "How are you?" How often do you answer truthfully?
Great question.
Yeah, so that's one of the questions in there, because I never answer truthfully because.
And you created this game.
Because think about it, in this game, I would go there, but if I'm in an elevator and someone's like, "Oh, how are you?" I'm not gonna. It's weird.
But how refreshing would it be if you asked that to somebody and somebody's like, "You know what? I'm having like the hardest day. My breakup, blah blah blah, whatever. I just lost my job." Like, be like, "Damn, like
that's next level."
That's so next level.
Yeah, that's next level.
That's like superhero shit.
Totally, I agree. And that's why, like, questions, I believe, are an art form, right? Because how are you? That's one question that we're all used to. But just add a comma on a really. How are you really?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
you totally get a completely different answer.
That's great.
So I try to be very selective with the questions I ask.
What's been a career high for you at this point?
As far as career high, we're not really strangers. It's really the beginning for me. So it's hard to... Like, there's nothing huge that has happened yet, but I think the highs have come from every connection I've been making. Like, every single one has been a high. Every time I play the game with somebody or I see other people playing the game and creating an interesting connection with someone they otherwise wouldn't have gotten to know, that gets me really excited.
What's been your biggest career low? Was it that group?
My career low, for a long time, I didn't know what this project would really be. We're not really strangers, because it started as me photographing and interviewing strangers. And then I was like, okay, well, how do I empower other people to make meaningful connections? That was my intention. And then I spent 5 months building it up to be a platform where people could submit their photos and interviews with strangers. And we had like a how-to guide. Like, step 1 is the art of capture, seeing the person photographing. Step 2 is the art of question, and we gave an interview guide. And step 3 was the art of connection. That's where you submit your photo. And so I put a lot of money and time and, energy into creating that for We're Not Really Strangers. And then this game kind of naturally came about, and I had to and then I realized, like, wow, all that work that I'd put into making it what it is now, I no longer want it to be that. I have to now make it something else completely. And I was just looking at the website as it was, and I was like, wow, this all has to change. Like, I have to evolve this idea because it's not going to always stay one thing, you know? And I called my friend up, Nausea, and I was like frantic. I was like, I don't know. Like, I feel like I'm starting from zero again, you know, because everything I built for this project is it's obsolete in a way. Because now I feel like I have something that I'd rather do with it. And that was a career low that I could say. It's just having to start over.
How long did you stay in the space of like being frustrated or disappointed?
Maybe a few days. I mean, I was frustrated.
Did you let yourself have that?
Yeah. When I called my friend, I really let myself have it. I was like, I feel like starting over. I'm feeling so stressed. I put all this money into this and that. And then I realized, I called myself, and she called me out as well. She's like, Koreen, think about what you're saying. All you're saying is you created something that you love, but now you have a better idea for what you love. And now you just have to evolve. And that's going to keep happening.
Yes.
So I have to be, and then I had to just remind myself, like, I need to be open to evolving the product for this project because it's always going to evolve. So I just have to have that mentality.
You could hit this point in a year from now.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Like this thing.
I think you want to hit this point again.
Absolutely. So then that was the thing. I realized this isn't a low. It felt like a low just because it's hard. It's hard to start again because you have to put a lot of effort. But luckily, I'm obsessed and in love with this project. So it's been fun.
How does a person arrive at the point of feeling internally like they're good?
That is my journey. I'm still figuring that out, to be honest. The question I like is, when do you feel most beautiful? Mm-hmm. For me, those moments have been when I do street photography because I don't think about what I look like. You know, so my hair is pulled back. I'm in a hoodie, no makeup, but I'm doing what I love. And my value isn't coming from what I look like. My value is coming from how curious I'm about somebody else and how good I can make them feel and about the photograph that I take. You know, that's my value card in that moment. Whereas as a model, my value comes from how good do I look in this
What
moment.
Do other people think?
What do other people think, right? And that's, again, the external thing. I photograph models as well, right? So my favorite kind of model lets go, you know, and just kind of wants to contribute her part to the photograph, the vision. So if that means she looks a little bit ugly, or it's not her best angle, or it's not the most flattering expression, she'll go there to make the most interesting photograph. And I think that's where the art form comes.
What blocks a lot of people from reaching their goals in life?
For me, is anytime I give myself a deadline. That helps a lot. You know, so for this project, the launch event that I met you at, that helped me a lot because that meant I had to get these boxes done by August 23rd. They had to be done. The questions had to be done. The presentation had to be done. The invites had to be, you know, like everything had to be done. So it's a mixture of not getting in your own way, which can be harder to do, but also I think giving yourself deadlines to work, to motivate you, to be that lion behind you or that bear behind you.
That's good. Do you think some people struggle with like a feeling of being worthy of success and other things?
Yes, of course.
Where does that come from?
I don't know. It's such an interesting thing because when you hear somebody else say it, like, oh, I don't feel worthy of love or I don't feel worthy of success. It's like, why? Yes, you are. Just put the work in it. Yes, you are. You know, but it's a very intricate, weird thought process that like kind of gets in the way. What are your thoughts on it?
I think it's like this. Say somebody doesn't have the best relationship with money and making a lot of money. It could be because their parents grew up very poor. And so maybe there's an inner feeling of like guilt. Like I can't have, like my parents didn't have this, so I can't have all this money and success because they didn't have it, you know?
Yes.
I mean, it could be some really deep-seated stuff, right, that we're not even aware of. You know what I mean?
Very true. That's a good point.
Yeah. So I look at it like, it's almost like a car, like you have a car that's driving into the wall. It's just like keeps crashing into this wall. And you don't even realize you're crashing your car into the wall, right? Then the second phase is you like wake up and you like see your car crashing into the wall. Like, oh shit, like I'm doing that and I'm tripping myself up. Self-aware. Yeah, it clicks in, like you start to notice this habit or pattern that was once subconscious. Okay, now you're consciously aware of it. Like, oh man, you know what I mean? And then the third level is where you're able to like turn the wheel of your car and go around the wall.
We do that. We self-sabotage. Do you feel personally worthy of the love you desire?
It's a great question. I'm getting there. It's been a process.
What does that question mean to you?
What does that question mean to me?
Yeah, like how do you interpret that question?
First thing that comes to mind is roots. Like what was your upbringing like?
Mm-hmm.
Did you receive unconditional love as a kid? And if you didn't receive unconditional love, then that's going to be something that you're just going to have to be aware of throughout your life.
You have to drive.
Yeah. So we create neural pathways,
mm-hmm.
right? That are just sort of, it's our default way. It's like the 405 in our heads, right? Mm-hmm. But we can create new roads mm-hmm. by doing something multiple times, by turning a different way multiple times, and then we sort of retrain our brain. And that takes work to sort of carve out those new roads.
Totally.
Yeah.
And especially, for example, people who grew up without a father or mother.
Yeah.
You know, like you may have gotten unconditional love from your mom, but not from your father. So then that creates, you know,
that shows up in your adult life, man.
And it's so interesting to think about.
Yeah. And people on the other side of that, they don't see that. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? They personalize it. And so that's why relationships are so tricky. Unless you have self-aware people, right, in a relationship. And then I think the odds go up a little bit. Because if you have two people that aren't self-aware, I feel like that's going to be challenging.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
While we're on relationships, and I think it ties into the podcast too, what do you think about people running at the first sign of trouble? Do you feel like that's something that happens more these days?
I don't know. I think we have to strike a balance, I suppose, because there was a time where divorce was so vilified that you felt stuck in a relationship. Right. And now we're like on the opposite side of that spectrum where if we're dissatisfied for a brief moment, we'll just go on to Tinder or Raya, whatever, and we can find a new date. Right. You know, and so I don't know. I don't have the answer to that, but maybe we need a
balance.
Strike a balance between not settling, but also putting in the effort to build on something that's worthy.
We agree. Tell us about the balance between going for more and being ambitious and still being grateful for what you already have. I always think that's a tricky dance.
Right. Like even with the event, the minute I was so stressing out, like, will this event be good? Blah, 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 all the things. And then it went really well. And then I was like, hey, on to the next thing. You know what I mean? It's like I didn't really take it in like, oh, you know, like I'm so grateful for how it went. I was just like, hey, what's the next thing? I think it's just really important to make time in the day to devote to gratitude. I think it's just natural that once we hit a goal, we're not just going to lay in that and become complacent. I
think we're programmed to evolve.
Yeah, to evolve and want more.
Yeah.
You know, that's how...
But that's a tricky thing.
Yeah.
Because you lose touch with what you have to be grateful for. Yes. That's all I'm saying.
So, yeah, I agree. So that's why I think it's important to make ourselves be grateful. Like
dedicate the time, right.
To practice gratitude. At the end of the day, if you're not happy, what's the point? And no matter what level you're at, like every level has a different devil. You know that
every level has a different devil?
Something like that.
Never heard that, but love it.
Yeah, like every level will have its ups and downs.
Yeah.
And I just always love and want to be around people who just exude joy and positivity.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, like even when things aren't perfect or going great, having that core sense of gratitude, like that's what it's all about.
And it's because we all go through things.
Yeah, we all go through things, and there's always going to be like the next level.
Yeah.
So if you're grateful at every level, then you're enjoying it at least. You know?
Absolutely.
Like, have fun with it. Like I remember the day I cashed my biggest check not too long ago for modeling, and I was really depressed.
That was a bad day for you.
I was happy, like after I did that, I was like, oh, look at that, and I was like happy and proud of that. But I still found myself depressed for different reasons. Oprah says, you know, fame only magnifies what
I've heard the same thing. Yeah. So especially money in particular too. Like, so if you're an asshole before money arrives, you're going to be an even bigger asshole. And if you're like a giving person, it's just going to give you more resources to be more giving. So it'll magnify it.
Totally. I like to look at my life where I'm at and realize and kind of take example from it. You know, so for example, cashing a big check, still feeling depressed. That tells me that even if I'm cashing a much bigger check, I can still feel that, you know? So there's parallels. There's something I want to share is the day before my event, I had a conversation with one of my best friends who basically sat me down and told me, Koreen, I love you. We've been friends since we were kids, but right now it's kind of hard to be your friend because you're very selfish. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And she basically was telling me, because this project has been so consuming. And this is all I talk about. It's all I think about, especially at that past few months. And I kind of took that in, and I was like, wow, I don't want to be this person. I don't want to be a selfish person. I want to be like a loving, giving person. What has given me the most joy all the time is having people you love around you, family and friends. Like, that really is what matters most to me, so I don't ever want to lose touch with that. Even when a project is all consuming, I still want to be conscious of the kind of friend I am,
Yeah. So have you shifted since that friend had this conversation with you?
I think so. She was there at the event. I mean, the thing is, I have such amazing friends who will hold me accountable.
That's a good thing.
You know what I mean? And like sit me down and be real with me.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm more conscious of it. Like, let's not only talk about we're not really strangers. How was your day? Like, what's going on in your life? Tell me about, because she's a model, telling me about Fashion Week. But it was important for somebody to call me out. She could have easily brushed it off, and our friendship would have,
It's like a rift. It'll start, yeah.
Now I'm aware of it, and that's something I'm working on.
That's great.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we need friends like that around us because we have blind spots. We don't always see everything in the mirror.
Yeah.
If you had to say in one word what guides you and motivates you to keep pushing?
Necessity. And what I mean by that, it's like, I feel like with this project in particular, I have to keep doing the next right move, because it's like, I can't help it. I'm doing what I'm so passionate about that I can't help but keep moving forward. You know what I mean? And even if it's rough and like, I can't, all the answers are coming to me at once, because I'm so in love with it. And I'm really grateful that I found this thing. It's just, I have to. It's necessity.
It's almost like there's like a mysterious force that can drive us at times. I've experienced it with this podcast, with other artists I've worked with. Like, you just have to go.
It's like a flow.
Yeah, it's like being in flow. I think.
Yeah.
And
that's the word, flow.
Flow.
I like that word, flow.
That's it, because I'd 100% relate to that feeling. Not every project or thing do we get to feel that, but it's such a privilege to feel that. So many people don't, or they're seeking. Or I remember in between, had a long music career and like in a transition, I'm like started doing this, and there was like maybe 6 months or something where I was like, what's next? And I kind of was without that flow feeling.
Right.
It makes you so grateful when you find it again. It's almost like finding love.
Totally. What helped you find the flow again? What was that moment?
It just came to me. This just hit me one day.
Was there
this podcast literally just came one day?
You woke up?
I was finishing a yoga class.
Really?
Yeah. So I was just in like another world of Zen. What's amazing about meditation is things will just, you talk about flow, you'll find more flow when you meditate. Things just sort of come to you instead of you having to work.
So in the months that you've been doing this podcast, what's the most surprising thing you've learned about other people in the 2 months?
That's good. I got to really bring my A game with you. The most surprising thing, well, something that created a paradigm shift within me was when a guest shared this powerful quote. People aren't giving you a hard time. People are having a hard time. That's so good, right? Yeah. And that was...
Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. That's so important for us to remember. So it's like, I was going to share that with you earlier in the podcast when you talked about the guy that like went off on you.
That's what it reminded me of. Okay, so what advice would you give your 18-year-old version of yourself?
Whatever difficulty that you're going through right now, just remember that you're going to be grateful for it later.
Really, really good. I love a good answer.
Sorry.
That's so good.
We just grow and evolve and move beyond whatever's holding us back so that we can really get into the innate gifts that we all have. You know what I mean?
Totally. Like, one thing I think that should be encouraged in schools is finding what you're really passionate about, what you love, or what you're curious about. And having that as a core, I think, makes life better. It's something that's within. No one can touch that.
Yeah.
It's an untouchable thing.
Yeah, and it's a mysterious thing. It's like what you said about necessity. That was so interesting to me. Like, you're just called to do this game.
Yeah.
You like have to do it.
I have to do it.
That's like how I feel about this podcast. And we should be so grateful that we have that.
Excited. Gratitude.
Because it deepens, absolutely. That's going on the list tonight. I'm restarting it tonight.
Me too.
Can we have a commitment where you're going to start yours tonight?
Yes, I will.
Okay. So fun having you on today.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much again for tuning in to today's episode. It really means the world to me. If you heard anything relatable that created new awareness for you, please visit our podcast on iTunes and leave a rating or review. This helps build our audience. Please comment, like, and share this episode out with your family, friends, coworkers, or anyone who you feel would benefit from the messages shared in today's episode. I'm really, really grateful for your help in spreading these messages of hope and wisdom. The world is in such great need right now, and your support helps carry the message onward to others who need it. Also, please consider becoming a monthly financial contributor to the podcast. You can do so by visiting connectionismagic.com and clicking on the Patreon link. Patreon is a third-party platform which helps support creators in exchange for exclusive content and offers. You'll be able to get discounted merchandise like comfy hoodies, t-shirts, as well as retreat discounts where we'll have special guest speakers and group activities to connect you with like-minded community members. Again, thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, please stay connected.